Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue talking about my current project of coding an activation-based combat system. We have here the same program that we've been demonstrating for the last few videos. There is one obvious change, which you'll see if you hover over one of the pictures. This might not be that obvious if you're not looking at this in full screen, but as well as having the name of the character and their activation chance, we now have hit points as well. So this Undead Sorcerer has 20 hit points, Nicodemus has 4, Ichabod has 8, and so on. I've also coded a system which allows the characters to make attacks. It's not a very good system. It's certainly not a system that you would want to use in a finished game, but I usually try to think of the bare minimum system, code that, and then add elaborations to make it good. I find that that gets a working result much more quickly than trying to make everything that I want in it from the start. So, let's demonstrate the system of attacks. So, Nicodemus will attempt one activation, and he gets a success. Now we find that this enemy picture has become a link, and I can click on it to attack the enemy. If there was more than one enemy, I would sort of have a choice of who to attack, but in this case we only have one. So I click on it, I miss. Let's see if we can get a successful attack. So he's got a success and a failure. He attacks, and he hits for 4 damage. And if you hover over his picture, you can see that his hit points have gone down from 20 to 16, so it's keeping track of the damage as it should. It's also, you'll see that it's still a link, which it shouldn't be, because there's still a slight error in the way that this system works, which I shall hopefully have corrected by the next video. But anyway, the system is mostly working. It is allowing the characters to attack, and it's demonstrating hitting or missing, and it's doing damage, and it's keeping track of the damage. So now I'd like to show you the changes that I made to the variables. The first change is just a change to make it easier for anyone who happens to be looking at the code. This used to be called char underscore name, and this one was char underscore chance. And I thought that was a sort of illogical name because char stood for character, but it was only related to the player characters, and the enemies are characters as well. And I think I mentioned in a previous video that it should be called PC underscore chance and PC underscore name. And so I made that change. But they work exactly the same. More substantially, I've added an array called PC underscore HP, which of course stands for player character hit points. And I've added an equivalent one for enemies called enemy underscore hit points, or enemy underscore HP, sorry. Now, we were keeping track of successes and failures using temporary variables, I think $X and $W. And that isn't a very good practice because it's very easy to forget and use $X and $W for some random value or whatever it may be. And so you overwrite the value that you needed to keep. And so what I've done is I've added successes and failures, which are dedicated variables for the number of successes and the number of failures. But again, they work in exactly the same way. And finally, sometimes the enemy pictures were links and sometimes they weren't links. And we could have done that by having different passages for if they're links and if they're not links. But that's not what we're doing. We're using the same passage, this display passage. So because we're using that, we need to have a variable that keeps track of whether the picture should be a link. And I've decided to use can underscore attack. It's not short for anything. It literally means you, the player, can attack. As the note says, set to 1 if the player has an action, and therefore enemy pictures should be linked. And the way that it works is that when you roll, i.e. you decide how many successes or failures you get, I'll scroll past the code that we've already talked about in detail. But, I mean, there is one change in that we're using the variable named successes and failures. But once we get down to here, it says if successes are equal to 0, then we add to the display text a continue button. But if successes are not equal to 0, in which case they will be some positive value, we have the display text click on an enemy to attack them, and so that the enemies are clickable, we set can_attack equal to 1. And I'll show you next video in display how it looks at that variable to see whether it wants to display the picture as a link. But that is all we have time for now. I will leave it there. I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.